It's finally here. We have the New York Knicks schedule. We are on the brink of the New York Knicks title defense.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to the defending NBA champion New York Knicks. My name is Gavin Schall, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free picks on who's hitting a homer this MLB season. On today's show, we break down the New York Knicks schedule, why the Knicks are officially the NBA's top team to watch, a big stretch in March and another one in February that you should look out for, and a full breakdown of everything from opening night to the NBA Cup games. And that is where we will start our show. You've known this for a couple of days, but we've not talked about it on the show yet. The New York Knicks open their title defense with the Philadelphia 76ers. This should not surprise anyone. From the second LeBron James went there, I think it was a pretty foregone conclusion that was going to be the opening night's game. The defending champs against far and away the biggest story in the league going into next year, at least in terms of like a mass popularity perspective. It is the Sixers. It is LeBron being there. It is the star-studded starting lineup they put together, whether we like it or not. Even more so than the Knicks title defense, that is what people are going to be thinking about. That is what the average NBA fan is probably going to be interested in going into next season, especially when the two teams are longtime rivals, and the Knicks ended Philadelphia's season in incredibly embarrassing fashion, sweeping them out of the second round, winning by an average of over 20 points per game, and one of the loudest Game 4 blowouts you will ever see, and that included them taking over the Sixers stadium. So Philadelphia will be out for revenge, and the Knicks, I think, will be out to make a statement that night. And the Knicks have not had an incredible history in opening night games since I've been doing this podcast. There have been some high points. RJ Barrett hitting the three to beat the Celtics was definitely the top one. That was extraordinary. I still remember watching the ending of that game and just being in a place of total shock. Last year, beating the Cavs and overcoming a titanic Donovan Mitchell third quarter, certainly satisfying. But there have been some clunkers, particularly the 24-25 opener against the Celtics. I really think you are going to see a hyper-focused version of this team. And I'm curious to see if they could potentially like make a statement and beat Philly by 15 plus on opening night. I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty competitive game, and whatever chemistry issues the Sixers have initially, like I wouldn't be surprised if they beat the Knicks and then from there went like 8-8 or something. Like I don't think it's going to be a well-oiled machine, but I think all five of those guys are going to come out like maniacs, looking to make a statement. It is likely the healthiest Joel Embiid will be all season. I think they're going to play incredibly hard, and it'll be a telling first game, and we're 2 months and a week away from it. So that is extraordinarily exciting. If I had my druthers, I think it would have been cool to get the Pacers or the Celtics, just because we haven't seen Tyrese Halliburton in a long time. I think that would have been a cool return game for him in MSG. Would have fired the crowd up a little bit more, certainly from a Knicks fan perspective, at least as of today. I think I can speak for everyone and say Indy is much more of a rivalry, much more of an interesting matchup than Philly is right now. Or my top choice might have even been Boston, just so Mitchell Robinson gets his ring on ring night instead of having to wait until I believe it's March 14th when the Celtics play the Knicks at MSG for the first time this season. So that is a long, long wait for Mitchell Robinson to get his ring. You could say he did it to himself. You could say James Dolan did it to him. There's no need to relitigate that right now. And then for NBA Cup game, they opened that one up in Philly 10 days after the opener. That'll certainly be another. I really think Philly's going to play harder and better against the Knicks than they do against pretty much any other opponent this year. You get the Pacers on November 13th. That is one I have circled. I just miss watching the Knicks play the Pacers. And you know what it really is? It's not so much that I miss the Knicks playing the Pacers. I want to see how this ultra confident version of the Knicks looks against Indy, because the last time we saw We're not getting the full Pacers team back because Miles Turner's gone and Ivica Zubac is in his place, but we're getting an iteration of that same group. And look, the last time we saw that matchup, Indy dog walked New York, but it was with Tom Thibodeau. It was with a more limited version of the team, even without Mitchell Robinson. I would say it was with a worse roster and not as deep of a roster as what the Knicks have now. And obviously coming off the championship last year, the Knicks are just in a completely different and better place. And I've said it on this show. XJ said it on this show. I think Zubac, Turner to Zubac is probably a small downgrade for them. Even if Zubac is a better player in a vacuum, I thought part of what made them so potent was having 5 out around Tyrese Halliburton and just giving him like these wide gaps to drive through that he's not necessarily going to have anymore. He'll have something different. He'll have like a really interesting pick and roll partner. And he's such a versatile player. Like I think he'll probably just be starting to hit his stride around a month into the season, a little less than a month into the season. But I think that's another game where the Knicks can make a statement in Indy, and then you get Cleveland at home on November 25th, day before my dad's birthday. That'll be a super fun game. And the Knicks should wreck Cleveland this year, unless the Cavs have one more big move in them before the season actually gets rolling. That is a team that has gotten worse since last year and lost Dean Wade and didn't really add anything. James Harden is a year older. Maybe this is the year Evan Mobley finally puts it together and learns how to shoot at a higher level. I kind of think he is who he is. Maybe he'll surprise us. People have been talking about him including me, having like an all-NBA type breakout each of the last 2 seasons. I think maybe the year he won Depoy, he made an all-NBA team, but not a guy who looks like a perennial all-NBA contender quite yet, in my mind. I think the Knicks should wallop the Cavs this year. And then the Knicks play the Heat at home 2 days later on November 27th. If you guys don't know, I think I've made my stance on the Cup pretty clear. I will obviously be rooting for the Knicks to win each of those games individually. In a broader sense, I don't really have a ton of interest. Call this non-competitive loser talk for me. I don't really have a super high level of interest in the Knicks playing Cup games again this year. Like, I mean, to be clear, if it happens, I will really enjoy them and I'll enjoy the Knicks turning up from a competitive standpoint. But we all saw what it did to this team. We all saw that as a very real phenomenon, like having to scale up to championship level play and then come down from that and how to kind of find that happy medium and titrate down to the right level after shooting way up for the rest of the regular season. It is not natural in the history of NBA basketball, and is very clearly a challenge. But when we come back, I want to get into the easiest and toughest stretches of the Knicks schedule, and then we'll tell you why the Knicks are very clearly the NBA's most desired national media market. All right, guys, we are going to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Locked On Knicks is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before first pitch. The game I am looking at, sometimes it's a hitter who's been on a hot streak. Sometimes it's a favorable pitching matchup, or even a ballpark that tends to just give up a lot of home runs. Those are always the first things I look for before making my daily dingers pick. And for this one, I am going with a hot hitter in a big game, Milwaukee Brewers, maybe the Los Angeles Dodgers. Biggest threat in the NL. Game is in LA. What do they say about big time players in big time games? I'm going with Shohei Ohtani, little bulky, only designated hitting right now. I think he finds his 28th home run in that matchup. So are you ready to play your game today? You can join all the action at FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play free and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. All right, what up, guys? We're back here on Locked On Knicks. Let's do a full breakdown of the Knicks schedule. They played 34 games on national television. That is tied with, I believe, just the Sixers for the highest mark in the entire NBA. James Edwards had some good numbers, 13 back-to-backs, one less than last year, so that's good. 13 two-day off stretches, 0 with 3 days off. I believe they had at least one, if not two stretches with 3 days off a year ago. So that's interesting, something worth noting. I think I would generally prefer like having an extra 2-day off stretch versus having like 1 3-day off stretch and like one of the or two of those 2-day off stretches taken away in turn. Like I'm pretty okay with that balance. And again, if you miss the NBA Cup, you're going to end up getting like potentially a week off there, at least like 5 or 6 days off there. If I'm remembering my timeline correctly on that. All-Star break, you get a week. So I'm okay keeping it to 2-day off stretches. And I think in general, this is something I'm going to talk about on a future show, crossover with Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball. I think the Knicks should take a very cautious approach to the regular season. I think on the back-to-backs, you should be seeing at least one starter sitting in all those games, or maybe games where they just sit everyone. The issue is with the national TV games. The NBA is not going to want you to sit everyone, and they're going to potentially fine you if you sit everyone. So I think the Knicks will sort of rotate through starters sitting at least one game. As far as the toughest stretches, the first 4 games of the season is sort of the initial one that I am looking at. Philadelphia, 3 days later, you do get 2 days off there, which is really nice to start the year. You play Philly, then you go to Boston, and then you play Orlando at home on October 25th, and then you play Detroit at home on October 27th. Those are 4 teams that are desperately going to be trying to make a statement against the New York Knicks. We already talked through the Sixers. You got to imagine you're going to get a hyper-motivated Mitchell Robinson, and just like I said about Joel Embiid, that is probably going to be about the healthiest he is going to be all season. Jason Tatum, 5 out, well, not 5 out looks, but like heavy shooting lineups, heavy defensive playmaking lineups. Me and XJ have made our stance on this pod pretty clear. We both think the Celtics are, and maybe this is obvious to some people with Jason Tatum back, but clearly a better team than they were last season. I think maybe even a better team than they would have been with Paul George this season, or excuse me, than they would have been with Jalen Brown this season with Paul George in his place. I just think it's a better fit, even if you could argue Jalen Brown is a better player in a vacuum. So I think that's going to be tough. Orlando, we gave you the full breakdown with Philip Rossman Reich. Detroit, we gave you the full breakdown with Kuka Heel, so you can go there for details. But those are 2 teams with a hell of a lot to prove. And you got to imagine the Pistons are going to be hyper confident. But the flip side of that is going to be a rare game this year. We saw last season, like, there were not a ton of teams that the Knicks like super duper got up for. Like obviously the NBA Cup games, we saw the Knicks. We saw like kind of it was a little false Super Saiyan before the full Super Saiyan in the playoffs, right? We got a preview of like the ceiling that the Knicks can elevate to, and we saw that in the Cup. We saw that at times when they played the Oklahoma City Thunder last year. Kind of saw it at times against the Boston Celtics, but we saw it against the Nuggets. I think the Knicks really turned up to play the Nuggets last year, but there wasn't really like one Eastern Conference team that I think, frankly, the Knicks super duper respected. And to their credit, given that it was like an all-time dominant run through the East, I think the Knicks were almost justified retroactively in having that opinion in the regular season in terms of how they treated the regular season. I'm curious if they approach the Pistons matchup differently. Maybe they don't, because they say, hey, you kicked our butt all regular season last year. You can kick our butt all regular season this year. Are you guys even going to show up? You didn't show up in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. But I wonder if just like the disparity in those matchups makes the Knicks lock in. And like that is just broadly one of my biggest remaining questions this offseason. Like, to what extent do the Knicks show a killer instinct in the regular season? Because I could really see it going either way. You could say they won the title, like they're going to play with even less intensity. They're going to kind of slug their way to the 6th seed. They're going to, like, especially early, lose a bunch of games because it's a quick turnaround. And like after you won a championship and you had probably some of the highest adrenaline highs any team has had in a single year in NBA history, how do you go back to just playing regular season basketball? Like, there's going to be some level of championship hangover. Or you could see something like the 73-9 Warriors, where they say, screw it. Like, that's who we were. We hit that high. We don't want to lose that. And we've only had 2 months off. We're still going to be in that same rhythm. We're still going to be in that same form. We had an offseason to get healthy, to get surgery, to rest, to relax. Not a ton of pressure on us to, I mean, like, obviously individually to improve their games, but like not a ton of pressure collectively relative to previous offseasons to say, hey, we have to figure out our identity as a collective. Like, they did that. By and large, they solved that in the playoffs. And I guess given that, like, maybe there's a world where they come out and they just kick butt. And I've talked about that scenario too. They come out and they go 16-2. And I think if you get that version of the New York Knicks, I look to opening night against Philly. I look a little less, but still significantly that second game against Boston, a little bit against the Magic, but I don't think the Knicks have any reason to like really turn it up against Orlando, even if they play the Knicks well when they're fully healthy. But Detroit, I think, is a perfect example of a game where you will really see the Knicks turn up if they are sufficiently motivated to do so. But when we come back, I want to take you through some more of the easiest and hardest stretches of the Knicks season. We'll get into that in just a sec right here on Locked On Knicks. All right, let's wrap up the show with some of the other toughest stretches of the season for the New York Knicks. Another one I was looking at was November 7th through November 19th. You get 2 games against Cleveland. You get that cup game against the Indiana Pacers, so that will be high intensity. You get 2 games against the Toronto Raptors, I believe both on the road, same weekend. And then you get the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are going to be really good this year. Really interesting team with LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards. If he's healthy for that game, that is going to be, I think, one of the tougher matchups the Knicks play all season, because even though Cat tends to play really, really well with Rudy, Anthony Edwards seems to just do a spectacular job, like honestly better than probably anyone this side of Asar Thompson and maybe Dyson Daniels guarding Jalen Brunson for whatever reason. Maybe Brunson breaks out of that and cooks him a little bit, but that's a tough matchup for Brunson. And we all know what LaMelo can do, and his Hornets teams late in the year played the Knicks really well. So that is an interesting combo. And again, the Knicks are going to get everyone's best shot. Minnesota is a team, when they're focused, they can be really good, and they have a ceiling that can approach what the Knicks can do. Whether or not that's one of the Knicks' toughest stretches will almost entirely come down to whether or not the Raptors have Kawhi Leonard. I do think Toronto is going to be better regardless, and they will probably play the Knicks better regardless than they have the last couple of years, where the Knicks have just consistently kicked their butts and honestly kind of like babied them a little bit. We're like, oh, you're in the game halfway through the third quarter. Isn't that cute? We're actually just going to win by 20 now. I'm curious if they get Kawhi. I think that is arguably going to be the Knicks' toughest matchup in the Eastern Conference this year. Right now, it's not looking, I don't know, I would almost put it less than 50% chance Kawhi Leonard ends up on that team, with the investigation continuing to extend. And even despite Adam Silver wanting it to be done months ago, seemingly no assurances it is going to be done before the regular season starts. And it being done before the regular season starts seems somewhat contingent on Steve Ballmer agreeing to his punishment and not challenging it further in court or any type of further counter litigation to what the league is doing. We'll see what happens there. Another interesting one was starting on January 11th and rolling through January 22nd. The Knicks in that stretch take on Denver, who is obviously still very good. We'll see if they get Peyton Watson back. That's still not resolved. They have to go to Boston. They play Miami at home, Giannis and Bam. Not like you might win, but you're going to get beat up. They play the Mavs, who with Kyrie back, really elite front court rotation. Cooper Flag. That's going to be a tough matchup. That is around the same time when they played Dallas at home last year and got wrecked against a much worse Mavs team. We'll get a look at Moussa Cisse, RIP. Hopefully, maybe he won't even be playing. Then they get Mini at home. That's always a brutal, challenging game, as I just mentioned. And then they get Toronto at home. Again, that comes down to the Kawhi factor. And they have to go to Atlanta. So that is just 2 for 6-7 straight games against, I think, good to potentially really, really great competition. And just physically, that is a stretch that I think is really going to challenge them. You play like a bunch of really imposing defenses over the course of that run. And you know what? If Kawhi stays in LA, you get the Clippers and the Suns and the Hawks, and then the Lakers, like 4 games straight after that. Like the Clippers without Kawhi, probably pretty light work. Phoenix, I think, beat the Knicks both times they played last year, beat them twice. That's not an easy match. We know Atlanta's not an easy matchup. We know Luka plus shooters plus a rim protecting big is a pretty potent combo. And then you could even extend that. You go at Brooklyn, who's better than last year, at Detroit, Toronto at home, and then at Oklahoma City if you want to stretch that run out. So that is like a long, like you could look at that as an 8-game stretch. You could look at that as like a 14-game stretch. If you look at it as, let me see, there's total, it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. If you look at that as a 15-game stretch, the Knicks went anything better than 9-6 in that stretch, not at least 9-6. I would consider that a major victory. So that is something to pinpoint and look back on a little later in the year. The February stretch that's really tough is kind of the same exact run, like it just sort of continues for the Knicks. Like I just grouped it slightly differently, where I started with that February 3rd run. We get Detroit, Toronto, at Oklahoma City, probably the single toughest game you play all year. Charlotte at home, not as good as last year, but still no picnic. At Philly, Golden State at home, you should win that. At Memphis, you should win that. At Detroit, OKC at home, Philly at home. If people consider Philly and Oklahoma City two of the top 4 teams in the league, Detroit, I would put probably in my top like 7 or 8. And then Toronto, theoretically, with Kawhi, I would put in like my top 6. So that is potentially a very difficult stretch there. And then did I have one final really tough stretch? No, that's probably my last really tough stretch. And then my final easy peasy stretch I wanted to go over is at New Orleans, at Washington, at Cleveland, Utah at home, San Antonio at home, Brooklyn at home, and at Utah. That is December 16th to December 30th. So before that, like really brutal January through February that I think historically the last few years has more so been like late February into early March where the Knicks have really been challenged. I think they're going to have that real punch you in the gut, punch you in the mouth stretch a little bit earlier this time around. You get a little bit of time off in December, which is nice, right? Like just right around NBA Cup time, and you get a little bit of a mental and physical break at a point in the season where the Knicks at times have struggled a little bit just because it's kind of the dog days of the season a little. You're still sort of fresh, but you're kind of beaten up. Maybe you're dealing with an injury. I think that stretch is very forgiving. And then I think that like mid-March stretch that at times the last 2 years has been pretty unforgiving for the Knicks is actually really easy this time around. So I'm going to go from March 16th all the way to April 2nd here. You have at Washington, Sacramento, Washington at home, New Orleans at home, Rockets at home, at Charlotte, at Orlando. That's a tough back-to-back. Charlotte at home, at Brooklyn. That is a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 game stretch. You want to go 8-2 in that run. If you go 7-3, you'll take it. Not the end of the world, but you would love to go at least 8-2. And that is like a fantastic chance if the Knicks kind of take my advice and treat the regular season as like a very gradual ramp up process. That is the stretch where you turn up. And maybe they're as low as like the 6 or 7 seed when it happens and you rip off 10 straight games there. And because the East is so congested, you ricochet or rocket your way all the way up to like a 3 seed after that. And then you close strong when they're battling for playoff position down the stretch. It's actually like fairly light after that 10 game stretch. It's Boston at home, at Atlanta, tough game, but you should win it. At Milwaukee, tough game, but you should win it. And then an interesting close to the season, right? Where you close Detroit and Indiana, you get them both at home, but it is totally plausible that the Knicks, Pistons, and Pacers are all like within a game of each other going into those final 2 games. The NBA is very strategic about trying to make those last couple of games matter. It's very intentional that they finish off the season that way. There's a world where it doesn't matter and the Knicks are already locked into their seed and they're sitting everyone, or Detroit is like run away with the 1 seed again, or Indiana maybe is run away with the 1 seed again, or is just locked into the 6 seed. Is not super concerned about changing it. I've talked about and pointed out a scenario where like the Knicks, just because of how congested the Eastern Conference is from a talent perspective, if they have injuries, especially, like they might be very, very conservative in those final few games of the season, resting guys and be like, you know what, if we're the 5 seed, if we're the 6 seed, that's okay. We don't really have to go for it. But under Tom Thibodeau, they certainly would have gone for it last year with Mike Brown. I think no, they got locked into their seed and then they didn't really have to push forward from there. But we'll see how they approach it this time around. My final concluding point to all this is, don't take it for granted that the Knicks get 34 games on national TV. I know most of you, like me, would probably rather just watch Mike Breen and Clyde together. That is my preference, but it's still cool to be at the top of the heap. Obviously, with the New York market, the Knicks are, even when they suck, are going to get a disproportionate amount of national TV games. But playing on opening night, playing that first game on Christmas, I know, especially the Christmas game is like traditional, even when the Knicks are bad. So maybe I'm reading too much into this, but it is very clear, even like regardless of the championship, like this has been 5 or 6 seasons now of the Knicks just being hyper relevant as a franchise. And the championship is obviously the cherry on top, but given what so many of us grew up with, it is so incredibly cool to say, hey, the New York Knicks are the center of the NBA world. It's LeBron, not the Knicks traveling to LeBron. It's LeBron walking into MSG, trying to make a statement against a team that's proven to be where he wants to go and where his team wants to go. But that is it for tonight's episode. Please remember to subscribe. It is the single best way you can help us grow the show. Like, comment. I will try to get back to every single comment that I see. And a reminder that after you make Locked On Knicks your first listen, which we really appreciate, that Locked On NBA has no offseason, so you should make that your second listen. Wes, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. You can find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks. So long, and we'll be back with 3 more, or at least 2 more episodes to wrap up the week.